Welcome, and thank you for finding your way here. This is a quiet space, one made for soft voices and overlooked stories. So much of history has been told by men, about men, but here I offer something different. Stories of women, narrated by a woman, told slowly, gently, to help you drift to sleep. Research shows many people fall asleep more easily to a soothing female voice, perhaps because it echoes early comfort. If you'd like to join on these quiet journeys, I'd love to have you subscribe, and please share with me any topics you'd most like me to explore. Whether you sleep through every word or stay with me until the end, let's start to get relaxed. Turn on your fan, put on your eye mask, settle into your favorite weighted blanket, and close your eyes. Let's begin by taking 2 long, deep breaths and then sigh them out. We will start to switch your brain into a more relaxed state. Clear your mind and just listen to my words. Please enjoy this telling. Now let us begin to dissect beauty and power. There's a certain kind of silence around beauty. Not the glamorous kind that flickers on magazine covers or filters through a screen, but the deeper, older silence, the one that suggests beauty is either self-indulgent or shallow, a distraction, a woman's preoccupation, a soft vanity best kept in check. But history tells a different story. Beauty, for countless women across centuries and continents, has been far more than a passing concern. It has been currency when no other was offered. It has been armor in palaces and marketplaces, in courtrooms and kitchens. It has been a language of attraction, of diplomacy, of defiance. In a world that often withheld formal power from women, beauty became its own form of negotiation. Think of Cleopatra, not as the cartoon of seduction history often paints, but as a strategist who understood the performance of beauty as part of ruling an empire. Think of Empress Elizabeth of Austria, who sculpted her image with discipline bordering on obsession, not for mere vanity, but to wield public sympathy and maintain agency in a court that sought to diminish her. Consider the Mughal harems, where beauty wasn't just for the emperor's gaze, but a currency traded for influence, comfort, and sometimes survival. Even outside of thrones and titles, beauty has long been woven into women's daily strategies. A painted lip before a protest, a pressed dress at the interview, a moment of grooming not just for approval, but for grounding for presence. In ritual, beauty became sacred, adorned bodies in ceremony, painted faces for coming of age, herbs and pigments passed from mother to daughter as quiet acts of power. These gestures weren't always about allure. They were often about agency, about shaping how one was perceived when so little else was in a woman's control. To look a certain way could mean safety, access, and leverage. To care for one's appearance could mean refusing invisibility. And yet, beauty's power has always come with complexity. What begins as self-expression can be co-opted into expectation. What offers protection in one context becomes pressure in another. But here, in this opening breath of the story, let's pause on the truth that beauty, far from frivolous, has historically been one of the few available tools in a limited arsenal. A blade hidden in plain sight. This script is not an ode to beauty nor a takedown. It's a meditation, an exploration of the edges and echoes of beauty's long shadow. Because before we ask what beauty costs us, we have to first acknowledge what it gave. But if beauty is a tool, then whose hand is on the handle? That's the quiet contradiction that hums beneath so many beauty rituals. The sense that something meant to empower can just as easily restrict. That adornment can be a delight or a demand. That's what we call choice, which often arrives already prepackaged, edited, and filtered by the expectations of others. Because as much as beauty has served women, it has also been shaped by forces outside of them, by patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, and culture. Across centuries, women have been praised for conforming to impossible standards and punished for rejecting them. Pale skin, small waists, thick hair, thin bodies, plump bodies, hairless arms, curled lashes, full lips, bare faces. Every era selects its favorites, only to replace them as quickly as they came. The mirror, it seems, has always spoken with someone else's voice. So, while Cleopatra may have wielded beauty with precision, it's also worth asking, did she truly choose her image, or merely master the illusion of control within a limited frame? When Empress Elizabeth starved herself to remain waif-like, was that autonomy or captivity in silken disguise? Modern parallels are easy to spot. Today, women are told to do it for themselves, to wear makeup, sculpt bodies, smooth skin, not for men, but for confidence, professionalism, and self-care. And yet the consequences of failing to comply remain strikingly external. Fewer promotions, less screen time, harsher judgment. We are told beauty is optional, then penalized when we opt out. Even self-expression can come with a catch. Platforms that once promised liberation, Instagram, TikTok, beauty blogs, quickly became arenas of performance. The algorithm rewards symmetry, light skin, clear skin, thin frames, and polished looks. The same cycle, now digitized and monetized. This is not to say that beauty can't be joyful. It can, it is. But it exists inside a system that rarely asks women what they want, only how well they can deliver what's been expected. And so we arrive at the double bind, beauty as empowerment and beauty as entrapment, a performance that offers both visibility and vulnerability, a currency that enriches and costs at once. That's the heart of this meditation, not condemnation, but curiosity, not shame, but awareness. Because if we are to reclaim beauty as something meaningful, something chosen, then we must first understand the systems that shaped it and the sacrifices that came along the way. Not every ritual is a cage. Not every painted lip is a cry for help. But to pretend beauty is always neutral or purely empowering is to overlook the long shadow it casts. Let's walk through it together, one reflection at a time. There have always been women who understood that beauty wasn't just surface, it was signal, strategy, and sometimes salvation. In royal courts, harems, and salons, beauty wasn't dismissed as shallow, it was sharpened like a weapon, adorned like armor. Cleopatra, famously brilliant and politically astute, also mastered the art of presentation. Her legendary allure wasn't accidental, it was cultivated with intention, woven with symbolism. Her use of makeup, perfume, and fashion was diplomatic, not decorative. She knew how to command attention in rooms full of men who underestimated women. Beauty gave her a kind of soft power, one she wielded alongside alliances and intellect. Centuries later, Empress Elizabeth of Austria, Sisi, as she was affectionately known, turned her appearance into a form of identity control. Her strict regimens, corsets, and floor-length hair became acts of self-definition in a court that would rather she be ornamental and silent. For her, beauty was resistance in disguise, a way to maintain agency even if the rules were punishing. The Mughal harem, often misunderstood in the West, was not merely a place of passive concubines. It was a complex, often intellectually rich environment where women were educated, influential, and engaged in political life. Beauty and grooming were elevated to ritual, a way of honoring the body and, for some, asserting status within a stratified system. Adornment wasn't mindless, it was a means of navigating rank and forming alliances. Even the courtesans of Renaissance Venice, like Veronica Franco, knew the score. These women were trained in conversation, literature, and music. Their beauty was a door opener, but their brilliance was what kept them in play. In a world where most women were denied access to power, beauty became the key to rooms otherwise locked. This was never about vanity, it was about survival, about adapting within the constraints of patriarchy. When formal education, land ownership, and autonomy were denied, beauty became one of the few currencies a woman could reliably carry, and some, remarkably, turned it into an empire. Even in less regal spheres, women have historically used beauty with quiet calculation, a well-tied headscarf, a dash of scent, a stolen moment at the mirror before battle, literal or metaphorical. These weren't indulgences, they were forms of self-possession, of holding space, of reclaiming something in a world designed to take. This isn't to romanticize the constraints these women faced, but neither should we underestimate the savvy it took to navigate them. Beauty, in these historical contexts, was far from passive. It was active, tactical, political. Sometimes it was the only power on offer, and women used it brilliantly. But even as beauty served as strategy, it often came at a steep and quiet cost. For every woman who mastered the game, how many were broken by its rules? The power beauty offered was real, but narrow, conditional, and fragile. It was power that had to be performed constantly and could be revoked without warning. Cleopatra could enchant an empire, yes, but that power still depended on her body being desirable in the eyes of men. Empress Sisi's legendary beauty required hours of painful maintenance, obsessive dieting, and emotional isolation. Her face became her prison, timeless on the outside, exhausted within. This is the paradox. Even when women used beauty to gain influence, the terms were rarely theirs to define. The gaze they played to was not neutral, it was male, imperial, often exoticizing. Cleopatra's image survives not just because of her intellect or political genius, but because history chose to remember her through the lens of seduction. The courtesans, for all their learning and artistry, still lived under threat of being reduced to mere decoration or scandal if they aged, fell out of favor, or challenged the order too boldly. The harem may have been more nuanced than its reputation suggests, but it was still a structure built around the confinement and ranking of women. The rituals of grooming and self-presentation, while acts of self-expression for some, were also compulsory. Beauty became the currency because access to other forms of power, property, voting rights, legal autonomy was denied. When one door is locked, you use what you have. But that doesn't mean the system is fair. Even today, echoes of this dynamic persist. Modern beauty culture often praises self-care, empowerment, and choice. But it still profits off insecurity, still feeds on comparison. The idea that beauty is a form of freedom coexists uneasily with the pressure to maintain it at all costs. And while some women in history used beauty to move through the world with agency, others were harmed by its ideals. The unnamed women who died from mercury-laced makeup, who scarred their skin with lead, who corseted themselves into deformity, they rarely made the history books. Their stories didn't survive in portraits or poetry, but their lives too were shaped by the pursuit of beauty's promise. So we're left with this tension, beauty as both resistance and reinforcement, as tool and trap, as a kind of power, yes, but one whose contours were often drawn by others. It doesn't mean the women who played the game weren't brilliant, they were. But brilliance forced into narrow corridors still leaves bruises. And when we remember them, we owe it to them to honor both, the power they claimed and the cost they paid. It's easy to speak of beauty as a personal preference, a harmless indulgence. But the truth is, beauty, how it's defined, maintained, and measured, has long been an economic lever. For many women, It determines more than confidence. It determines opportunity. Aesthetic choices can open doors or quietly seal them shut. Studies have repeatedly shown that attractive individuals are more likely to be hired, promoted, and paid more. But of course, what counts as attractive is shaped by dominant norms: thin, symmetrical, youthful, able-bodied, Eurocentric. This isn't about a swipe of lipstick or a good haircut. It's about how deep these standards run and how much they cost to maintain. Beauty isn't just skin deep, it's expensive. The average woman, depending on her location and income level, spends thousands annually on appearance-related products and services. Skincare routines, hair color, wardrobe updates, professional makeup, gym memberships, nail appointments. In some industries, especially those tied to hospitality, media, or public-facing roles, this labor is silently expected. You won't find it in the job description, but you'll feel it all the same. It's not frivolous, it's strategic, and it's unpaid. This pressure isn't evenly distributed. It deepens along lines of race, class, and age. Marginalized women often face a narrower margin for acceptable presentation and a higher cost to achieve it. Hair straightening, skin lightening, body sculpting, these aren't always personal whims. They're survival strategies in a society that doesn't always extend the same grace or opportunity to those who look different from its favored norm. Meanwhile, the beauty industry, now worth well over $500 billion globally, thrives on this churn of inadequacy. The message is subtle but relentless. You could be better, brighter, tighter, smoother, lighter if you just tried a little harder. And we do try. Not because we are weak, but because we are human. Because beauty, in this context, is not a luxury, it's a form of currency. And opting out, for many, isn't a real option at all. There's also the time tax. Hours spent plucking, painting, applying, removing, refining. What else could have filled those hours? What dreams might grow in that space if a woman didn't have to schedule around the next wax or worry whether she looked polished enough for her next client meeting? Beauty, in this sense, becomes not just a desire, but a demand, and the price is far more than money. And yet here we are, still painting our lips, wrapping our curls, tinting our lashes, still lining up for serums and scents and soft silk scarves. If beauty is a trap, it's one we often enter willingly, even joyfully. So what gives? The answer isn't simple, because beauty isn't simple. It's easy to critique the system, harder to let go of the rituals that make us feel whole. For many women, beautifying is not a response to shame, but a celebration of identity. It's a way of anchoring the self in an unpredictable world, of feeling rooted, visible, maybe even a little magical. Is it political? Sometimes. Is it personal? Always. From red lipstick in wartime to Sunday hair in Black communities, beauty has long been a language of pride and resistance. It's the grandma who won't leave the house without her earrings, the teenager discovering confidence in a swish of eyeliner, the woman who wears bright colors on a hard day just to feel a little stronger. These choices may exist within a system that profits off insecurity, but the intent behind them isn't always submission. Sometimes it's defiance. Sometimes it's healing. There's power in the mirror, but not always in the way we're told. It's not just about looking pleasing to others, it's about making peace with your own reflection. There's a reason why rituals of adornment exist in every culture, across every age. We paint and anoint and wrap, not just to become more beautiful, but to feel more ourselves. To claim some small sovereignty over our bodies, even in a world that constantly tries to edit them. The problem then isn't beauty. It's when beauty is gate-kept, when it's used as a weapon to exclude, diminish, or commodify, when the freedom to express becomes the pressure to conform. What would happen if we decoupled beauty from worth? if it became less of a measuring stick and more of a paintbrush, if we wore it when we wanted, not because we had to, but because we chose to. There's no shame in wanting to be lovely, but loveliness should never be the toll we pay for being taken seriously. Beauty should be a choice, not a condition of entry. So wear the red lipstick or don't. Straighten your hair or let it dance wildly in the wind. Adorn, abstain, experiment, retreat. Just remember, the most radical beauty act might not be how you look at yourself. It might be how gently you look at others. Still, for all the pressure and conformity, women have never been entirely passive in the face of beauty's expectations. If some standards were built to confine, others were joyfully torn down. And in the ashes of those constraints, something bold often blooms. Because when beauty becomes too rigid, too policed, too punishing somewhere, someone picks up a lipstick, a safety pin, or a pair of scissors and says, "No, not like that." There have always been women who painted outside the lines. In the 1920s, the flapper chopped her hair, rouged her cheeks, and danced right past convention. She wore her eyeliner thick and her skirts scandalously short, not because someone told her to, but because she was telling the world something. I am not yours to tame. Fast forward a few decades, and the riot girls arrived, shredding guitars with chipped black nail polish and smudged lipstick, screaming against the machine in combat boots and baby barrettes. Punk girls buzzed their hair, inked their skin, and turned fishnets into battle gear. Their beauty wasn't soft, it was loud, it had edges, it refused to smile on command. And then there was the afro. More than a hairstyle, it was a declaration of black pride, of sovereignty, of visibility. At a time when conformity was considered safety, the afro was thunder on the street. This is me. I take up space. I belong here. These weren't just aesthetic shifts. They were cultural tremors. Beauty became a megaphone, a refusal to disappear, a refusal to conform. Because sometimes beauty isn't about pleasing others. It's about claiming space, creating identity, saying no, loudly, with eyeliner, saying yes, proudly, with every curl, every clash of color, every studded leather jacket. For those on the margins, beauty has often been one of the few tools of agency. If the world insists on seeing you, you may as well choose how you're seen. Of course, rebellion often has a short shelf life. The secondhand shops of yesterday become the fast fashion of today. What was once defiant becomes marketable, flattened, filtered, and slapped on a billboard. But in the moment before the sellout, before the trend gets tamed, there is something electric, a kind of sacred irreverence. It's in the silver-haired woman who dyes her buzz-cut lavender, the trans teen experimenting with glitter and sharp lines, the girl who tattoos a sunflower over her surgical scar. These aren't just style choices. They're selfhood, stitched and drawn and dyed into being. So yes, beauty can be protest, a brushstroke of resistance, a subversion with mascara. And when it's wielded on our own terms, it doesn't just challenge the system. It reminds us we were never meant to fit inside it. But rebellion, too, can be repackaged. What starts as a bold declaration often ends up on a shelf market, tested, glossed over, and sold back to us under fluorescent lights. The flapper's bob, once scandalous, became a department store hairstyle. The afro, a crown of resistance and identity, was whittled down into a fashion spread. Riot Girl zines turned into edgy tote bags, and punk's jagged eyeliner now comes in designer palettes with marketing copy about being bold and fearless. Even the messy, makeup-free face, once a statement against over-commercialized beauty, can now be achieved with a 300 no-makeup routine and an influencer coupon code. It's not that the rebellion wasn't real. It's that capitalism is excellent at recognizing aesthetic threats and turning them into brand opportunities. This is where it gets complicated, because the rebel still wants to feel beautiful. The one who shaves her head in defiance may still wear lipstick, not for the gaze of others, but for the way it makes her feel like herself. The person who tattoos their face to reclaim ownership of their body still operates within a world that sees appearance first and meaning second. And when the market catches on, when resistance gets distilled into trend, it becomes hard to tell where rebellion ends and new expectations begin. Sometimes, what once felt radical starts to feel required. The pressure to be effortlessly edgy or uniquely natural or body positive but still glowing creeps in sideways. Women who once bucked the system find themselves managing a new set of unspoken rules. You must be different but not difficult, fierce but palatable, free but still desirable. And so the cycle continues, one aesthetic rebellion birthing another, each fighting to stay ahead of the curve that will inevitably flatten it into a product. But even so, it's worth something. The instinct to resist, to create, to carve a new shape out of old beauty codes that's powerful. Even when it's co-opted, it leaves a trace. And in that trace, the next rebellion finds its footing. Maybe the question isn't whether rebellion can stay pure. Maybe it's whether it can stay visible enough to remind us that standards were never sacred. They were made, and we can remake them. The mirror has changed, and these days, it talks back. It smooths pores you never knew you had. It lifts brows, brightens eyes, softens jawlines, plumps lips, and tells you this is what natural looks like. It's a mirror filtered through an app, fine-tuned by algorithms, and powered by the quiet churn of desire and dissatisfaction. Once, we painted our faces to resemble paintings. Now, we alter them to resemble a version of ourselves that never quite existed. The clean girl aesthetic, glossy lips, glazed skin, barely. Their makeup often takes hundreds of dollars in products and, increasingly, procedures, baby Botox, subtle filler, lash lifts, brow lamination. It's a curated effort to appear effortless. The face must glow but never shine, be sculpted but not obvious, look untouched but be obsessively maintained. Filters have become so normalized, many people aren't entirely sure what their unfiltered face looks like anymore, or how it feels to be seen as is. That soft pink haze and delicate blurring. It's not just about vanity, it's about control. A way to curate not just how we look, but how we're perceived, even if only to ourselves. Influencers, once admired for authenticity, now often blend into the same template, glossed and golden, with faces shaped by the trends they help create. And yet, behind the scenes, the pressures mount, constant upkeep, the fear of letting yourself go, the cruel comment sections if one's real face dares to peek through. The comparison trap becomes a lifestyle. But it isn't all shallow or sinister. Many women do find confidence in enhancement, whether it's Botox or balayage or a particularly good foundation match. It's not about shame, it's about navigating an impossible landscape with the tools we've been given. The human desire to feel beautiful is not inherently flawed. The problem arises when beauty becomes a subscription, always updating, always just out of reach. Because if perfection has become our new baseline, what happens to the rest of us? The ones with asymmetry and laugh lines, with aging skin and exhausted eyes? If no one online looks real, how are we supposed to feel real ourselves? Maybe the most radical act isn't deleting the filter. Maybe it's noticing that the filter was never neutral to begin with, that it taught us something and not always the truth. So here we are, blinking into blue light, squinting to see the line between enhancement and erasure, between what we want and what we've been sold. The question remains, if we're all chasing a face that doesn't exist, who profits and what do we lose? Maybe the answer isn't in rejecting beauty altogether or rolling our eyes at contour kits and collagen serums. Maybe the answer lies in becoming more curious about where our choices come from. and what they're trying to say. Noticing, not condemning, asking, not accusing. Because beauty isn't the enemy, not even filtered beauty. The danger creeps in when the filtered becomes the expected. When we forget that what we're seeing has been pinched and polished by invisible tools, and that even the natural look is often anything but. It's not a crime to enjoy these rituals. It's human to want to feel beautiful. But it's also human to pause and ask, beautiful for whom? At what cost? There is a strange kind of power in choosing your own reflection, especially in a world so eager to hand you a different one. Power in looking into the mirror and seeing not what should be changed, but what has weathered time, laughter, heartbreak, and come through softer, stronger, wiser. We don't need to disown adornment to reclaim it. Maybe it's lipstick because you like the color. Maybe it's letting your hair go silver because you're tired of pretending. Maybe it's Botox and bold brows. Or none of it at all. The point isn't the product, it's the ownership. You get to decide what feels like you, not the app, not the algorithm, not the airbrushed magazine or the latest skincare gospel whispered on TikTok. And that goes for how we see others too. Someone else's lashes, lips, filters, or fillers aren't yours to decode. Beauty isn't a competition or a referendum. There is no trophy for being the most natural and no shame in loving glamour. One woman's freedom might be another woman's pressure, and vice versa. So let's not build new cages in the name of authenticity. The invitation is simple. Make your choices with open eyes. Give yourself grace and give others space. Celebrate what feels like power to you and let others do the same, even if their beauty looks nothing like yours. Because when beauty stops being a set of rules and starts becoming a form of self-connection, it ceases to be a trap. It becomes a language, a rhythm, a little quiet joy that belongs to you and no one else. So keep the mirror, yes, but clean it. Make sure what you're seeing is yours and not just a ghost of someone else's dream. Whatever beauty means to you, whether it's a bold red lip, bare skin, silver hair, glitter shadow, or none of the above, let it be yours. Authentically, unapologetically yours. Glamorous or grounded, extravagant or earth-toned, your reflection doesn't need to justify itself to anyone, not even you. Good night, lovely one. May your dreams be untouched by comparison and lit softly by your own kind of glow.